Welcome along to the Sporting Life Timeform preview of day one of the Cheltenham Festival. David Orr, delighted to be joined by Dan Barber, Ben Fearnley and Matt Brocklebank to look ahead to the action. And Dan, we have to start with the Sporting Life Arkle and one of the clashes of the week.
Yeah, sponsorship or not, this is a race that I think is probably exciting everybody. You've got, I think, the most exciting horse in training, Shishkin. I know Envoy Allen's got a strong case to be made for him as well. And just a fascinating tactical shape to a race where Energumene, All Mankind, others are likely to try and force a strong gallop. Now, what it might prompt is something ridiculous from Shishkin. Sprinter Sacra, Altior level of Arkle performance. Because if those likely front runners do cut each other's throat and show a strong pace, you're sort of in masterminded champion chase territory where Shishkin could run to a ridiculously high figure. I think it's all on that really. I think it's how the race goes tactically. If Energumene can see off All Mankind early, and there's a chance of that happening because All Mankind has jumped quite low. You don't want to be doing that at Cheltenham. Maybe it will swing things slightly the way of the Mullins runner, but all things being equal, and the more I think about the race, I sort of feel whatever happens, they're just going to tee it up for Shishkin, who was such an incredible winner of the Supreme last season when you think about all the things that went against him and the fact he was still able to beat a champion hurdle hopers in the style that he did.
And Dan touched on it then, Ben. He's mentioned Sprinter Sacra, he's mentioned Altior. Is that the sort of league that we're heading in with Shishkin, or are we already there?
I don't think we're quite there yet. I mean, a horse overcoming the difficulty he did to win a Supreme that's worked out very, very well. You know he's somewhere up around that top bracket, but you need to show up at the big festivals. That's part of it, time and time again, to be known as one of the greats. And there have been many really great, exciting Arkle winners in recent years, particularly trained by Nicky Henderson, and he could easily make up into being mentioned in the same breath as those horses for sure if he goes and wins. I think the race tactically, again, that's the most interesting factor in the race, looking at it for me, just how it's going to unfold. You think with All Mankind there's only really one way of running him. He just has to, he's calmed down a bit, but he's basically just going to be a front runner, isn't he? Energumene is a very exuberant front runner, but I think they could hold on to him a little bit and just track All Mankind if they had to. I'm not necessarily guaranteeing that there's going to be a pace burnout, but I think either way, I think Shishkin is the one that we all, certainly at Timeform, I think we're all behind him really in terms of him, the time figures that he's posted, the hurdle season that he had, everything just points to him being absolutely top class. And I think he's got it all. He's got the stamina and the grit that saw him win the Supreme last year, but he's also got a very, very high cruising speed. I mean, a few people were talking about him maybe, given how he won the Supreme, maybe going up in trip because he had shown stamina to win, and it was a well-run race that he was winning in the Supreme. But he's one of those horses that's just got it all. He can cruise and he can find and look like a stayer at times as well when he has to. So I think he looks like the complete horse at this stage, and really, really excited for the Arkle.
Matt, how do you see it?
Yeah, fun race this, isn't it? You've got All Mankind, who just seems to adjust a little bit to the left, or he certainly did in the Henry VIII at Sandown, and Energumene, who seems to go the other way as well. So yeah, there could be. It's going to be really fun. Interesting to hear what they're saying in terms of those sort of Timeform figures. Because Shishkin, if you go back to Altior and Sprinter Sacra in their runs before going to Cheltenham, before going to the Arkle, he's actually on that Kempton run. He's only a couple of pounds behind them on Timeform figures. So, I mean, Sprinter Sacra had the likes of Alpha Off, winner of the Supreme the year before. Some really, really good horses in behind. Q-Card was in that Arkle as well, and it just enabled Sprinter Sacra to post an unbelievable 180 figure. And I genuinely think we might see something special. It's a bit dull. I prefer it when we disagree with each other. But I'm with Shishkin here. And again, like Ben touched upon, I like the fact that whilst obviously he's only been able to beat what's been put in front of him as a novice chaser, and we haven't really seen him have to fight at all, he fought to win the Supreme. And he fought to win a Sky Bet Supreme when everything went against him. It's just reassuring, isn't it? It's just a comfort blanket knowing that he's done that. He's got that in him. And whereas Energumene, a huge talent, nothing against him really at all, apart from that slight adjustment, which might cost him. It's not cost him so far. His ability's been so much greater than the horses that he's come up against. It's been able to get him out of that, and he's been able to paper over that potential crack. it might just show up in an Arkle, a Sporting Life Arkle, run at a breakneck gallop around Cheltenham, where he's never been before. All Mankind has been there. He ran really well in the Triumph. He ran there a couple of times as well earlier on in that juvenile campaign. And I actually like him. I think he might ultimately give Shishkin more of a scare. Now, you know, you're not getting much of a price about any of them, to be perfectly honest. And maybe if there is one in there, Captain Guinness might run a big race if someone's looking for a big price, because I think he might just be ridden with a bit more restraint. He wants better ground. He's not really had that through the winter in Ireland so far, and he was kicked into touch, in fairness, by Energumene, but I thought he was running quite a nice race in last year's Sky Bet Supreme before being brought down, and he suffered first time out this season. A fibrillating heart was identified, so that's again at the back of your mind. But if you're fairly well compensated around the 16-1 mark, and obviously Henry de Bromhead wouldn't bring him over to Cheltenham if he wasn't A1. He's looked pretty good, and he tipped up in his prep. So, you know, it's been a roller coaster ride with Captain Guinness, but I think there's a good horse in there, and he might just be able to sort of like run on into a place, I think.
I should give a mention to an excellent interview we got with Nicky Henderson on site on Sporting Life, which he reveals Energumene actually schooled at Seven Barrows under Nico de Boinville before heading over to join Willie Mullins. He's one that got away as far as the Henderson team have gone. But it's a strong vote of confidence behind Shishkin there from our team for the Sporting Life Arkle, the Unibet Champion Hurdle, Dan. I'm going to have to start with the first question. Where are you right now with Epitant?
I don't know where I am with Epitant. I don't really know where I am with most of the main players. I think this is, without exaggerating, I think this is the hardest race to price up, because I think it's the race with most market principles having the biggest potential variation in the price. Last season, on that form, Epitant might be 7-4 chance. On the Kempton form, she's a 10-1 chance. Silver Streak, if you take the defeat of Epitant literally, should be a shorter price, but if it was a complete flash in the pan, then he probably should be bigger. And I think the same goes for Honeysuckle, who's got to prove herself around a sharper 2 miles than she's faced previously. And Goshen, spectacular last season. Would have been one of the best Cheltenham performances I've ever seen. But we still must have in the back of your mind what happened on the flat and what happened on his reappearance over hurdles. I mean, does that obliteration the other week at Wincanton mean that you can completely forget about those? I mean, he's another horse I just think he's very hard to price up. And going back to the Epitant question, I thought much like Paisley Park in the Stayers division, she had the scope to dominate for 2 or 3 seasons or so, but there has been a bump in the road, and when you've been asked to take shortish prices, that's obviously got to be in the back of your mind. Plus, also, Dave, how strong a race was it last season? I'm not sure it was the best we've seen.
Cheltenham coming through, and Sky Bet are on the charge, with money back as actual cash if you lose on the first race of the festival. Sky Bet, that's betting better.
Ben, let's talk about tactics for this. How big a problem for Rachel Blackmore and Honeysuckle do you think the presence of Goshen might be?
I don't think it'll be an issue, really. I think Honeysuckle's shown in Ireland that she's, and by winning the amount of races that she has in a row, that she's pretty versatile. What I do think about her is that she's had excellent rides on her last 3 wins. The three victories, most recent, one of them was in the Mares Hurdle at Cheltenham last season, where I thought on another day, without Rachel Blackmore's excellent tactical move that she made at just the right time, that might have ended up going the other way. It was obviously tight between the 2 mares. On her reappearance, she was run over 2.5. she was conceding race fitness honeysuckle to the rest of them. Rachel Blackmore essentially just won the race with the mare's speed at 2 out, and then the others were just closing late on. And I thought last time as well, she just took the race by the scruff of the neck after sort of 4 out and just powered clear in really, really impressive style, but in the sort of style where, to me, watching it back a few times, I just thought that ride was absolutely perfect for the scenario. They hadn't gone very hard in the sort of early stages, and in the end, Honeysuckle's just essentially been allowed to cruise into the lead, and she's built up the lead gradually, and the others in behind simply, the jockeys have been caught out, I think, a little bit in that race, and they've just been out of their ground. By the time push came to shove, she was a long way clear. So I think she's been getting brilliant rides. I think she'll probably get another brilliant ride. That's nothing to hold against her. I think she's very tactically versatile, but I think she has been seen in a good light on her last few starts, and she is favourite. So I've got nothing to really say negatively about her, but I think she'd be one that I would probably look to sort of take on. Epatante as well at the prices, I think, is probably short enough given what she did last time. I think going back to the tactics, I think the tactics is the key angle that I'm looking at here. I think it's going to be a very, very strongly run race. Jason the Militant, Goshen's only got one way going really. They held on to him a couple of starts back and he just completely pulled his chance away. He might not need to outright lead, but they can't really hold him up, and he's just got such a high cruising speed that you need him near the front, and he needs to go a certain pace. There's a few other front runners in there as well, so I'm playing the race, looking for a horse that's going to be suited by really just coming there on the bridle, coming to the last, and hopefully winning or going close. And the horse that I'm siding with is Abacadabras with that in mind, because I think he's a horse that he's only really been in one really strongly end-to-end run race, and that was in the Supreme last year when obviously he got beaten by Shishkin. You look at it again and he probably should have won, but he ended up in front a long way out, and he's a sort of horse that he doesn't do a lot off the bridle. He's all about cruising into his races. So I just think he would be I can see him being really suited by the way the race is run. He's been a little bit forgotten about. He got hammered by Honeysuckle last time, obviously, but that wasn't an end-to-end gallop. That was a case of Rachel Blackmore winding it up from halfway, not leaders stopping in front. So I think this will be a lot more up Abacadabras' street, and I'm hoping that he can run well at sort of double figure price each way. I think would be the way that I would play it at the moment.
And Matt, I'm sensing you might be in full agreement with that.
Yeah, he's my sort of anti-post position, Abacadabras. He was the tip sort of 14, 16 to 1. I know he has shortened a bit now. I mean, complete agreement in terms of how the race is going to be run and trying to get cute in terms of looking for something that might just be finishing better. He's just going to be held on to, isn't he? He travels so well at his very best. He jumps brilliantly. Let's not overlook that. One horse potentially on that very line of form being overlooked in the betting, I'd say possibly is Aspire Tower, just because obviously he's a 5-year-old and the statistics certainly in recent years are against him. But he's been quite lightly raced this time around. I quite like that. They said that over Christmas last year when he won that big race for juveniles at Leopardstown by about 18 lengths, he looked like the outstanding juvenile in the division. And I think maybe after Christmas he'd sort of run his race through the season. He had already had a couple of runs going into that, and he sort of peaked. He ended up finishing placed in the Triumph Hurdle. He ran really well. He was going to be blown away by Goshen, but I think Henry's horse has improved a whole lot since then. And if you're looking at Abacadabras, he's beaten him twice this season. He's finished in front of that horse, and he's a much bigger price than him. So I wouldn't be ruling him out. He's a bit of a sort of a big cruising type, Aspire Tower. I know that obviously Rachel's going to be on Honeysuckle. Superb jockey. You're going to get Jack Kennedy, I suspect, on Aspire Tower, and he's going to be ridden in behind the pace. He can make it. He made the run in a lot as a juvenile, but he's probably going to be run in behind these horses, and you're just going to get a really nice run with him, I think. I don't think there's any complications about him at all. He doesn't have to lead. He fiddled a few jumps last time out when he was beaten quite easily by Sharjah, but the way that he was finishing that race around Leopardstown I thought was really promising with Cheltenham in mind and that hill, especially if they go a searching gallop, because I just not entirely sure that sort of relatively sharp nature of Leopardstown played to his strengths. Certainly with those last 2 jumps that he fluffed a little bit, he's capable of much better in terms of the jumping department, and I think he could run quite a big race, I think, Aspire Tower. Certainly if it's decent ground. He was a nursery winner for Richard Hanna on the flat. He's got a good flat pedigree. I think he wants better ground.
Right, chaps, it's that time. You all look forward to another best bet or two for Tuesday if you've got them. Dan, start with you.
Yeah, mine's in the Boodles, as is now, was Fred Winter, and it's Hooghry. I suspect this horse might be very much in the mould of the many other Nichols ex-French trained juveniles that have farmed this prize down the years. They arrive in this race having had very little for the handicapper to go on. Sanctuaire was a classic case in point, and you stop that Chepstow Finale Hurdle 2 out, it looks a match for two horses that are on the Salem, maybe bound for this, but maybe bound for the Triumph, and Adagio is certainly bound for the Triumph. He's off 1-2-8. The noises are ridiculously bullish from the stable as well as to how he's been working. He cost 200 grand from France, and I know for a fact they were aiming at the Triumph immediately, and I think they saw that handicap mark and couldn't enter him for the Boodles quick enough. So I think he's likely to go for a fairly short price favourite. I suspect you want to be backing him as quick as you can.
Ben?
I'll stick with Abacadabras in the Champion Hurdle. I've already obviously underlined the point about the tactics, I think, suiting him. This would be an each-way bet. But also, I'd just tack on as well, I don't think enough has quite been made, certainly recently, of the form of the Gordon Elliott stable throughout the winter. He completely dropped off from November onwards, and only really showing proper signs of recovery within the last few weeks. He had that 4-timer, obviously was misplaced in terms of the amount of media attention and things that were on the stable at that time. But that is a big step back in the right direction. And if you Timeform Race Passes customers will be able to go onto his profile. Obviously, they're running under a different name now, but you can see back through the season, the stable, how the Elliott stable have done, and you compare his run to form percentage from this year to recent years, and it really is noticeable how much they've dropped off from November onwards, and it's unlike any winter that he's had in modern times in terms of the way the horses were performing. Obviously, he went to the likes of Dublin Racing Festival, only had one winner, etc. Those were their headlines, but all across the board, they've just not been quite running as you'd expect them to. And I think that a lot of these Elliott horses might well bounce back at Cheltenham in a big way, and that is an angle that I'm going to sort of look to try and exploit. Horses that maybe have looked limited or have had their limitations exposed in February or January, just coming back better than ever at the festival. And Abacadabras would be one of those because he's not quite been brilliant on his last two starts. I think the way you're backing him is really looking at that Supreme last year. But it's another thing to throw into the mix, the form of the yard. I'm hoping that they're going to really bounce back in a big way next week.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Matt, anything else for Tuesday?
Yeah, before you steam into Dan's good thing in the Boodles, I'd urge anyone to just have a little look at Ollie Murphy's horse, Tinahalla, in the same race, just on a line through Homme Publique, Oliver Greenall's juvenile, who pushed Hooghry quite close, just beaten a neck by him in France during that time. Now, obviously, they've gone their separate ways and everything, but Tinahalla's come out this year, slammed Homme Publique at Catterick. It's gone up £16 in total, so I suspect Murphy was probably a little bit peeved initially, but the way that form's worked out with the Greenall horse winning since, it's decent. And he comes here and gets £2. He's rated 126, gets a couple of pounds from Hooghry now. So I'd say he's 20-1. He's certainly worth a look if you're interested in the favourite. The other one I really like on Tuesday is I Write. Now, people are going to look for sort of much sassier profiles in this Ultima handicap chase. It has been won by novices recent years, and you've got plenty dominating the market. Lieutenant Rocco, I fear that he might be a big, soft ground, heavy top horse, maybe one for a Welsh national further down the line. Happy Go Lucky's been winning in much smaller fields. Obviously, Ascaria 10 could be fairly well handicapped. I know they've nudged him up a couple of pounds in the last few weeks. He could be well handicapped. Half hoped he might go for the National Hunt chase, but I think I Write's just so solid. If you look back to last year's renewal of the Ultima, the conditional who'd been placed in the Ladbrokes Trophy earlier in the season went and won. I Write was second to Cloth Cap, who's obviously gone up massively since. He's bumped into a 164 horse there at Newbury. He's since come out and, take nothing away from Callum Bewley. I suspect he probably should have won the Sky Bet chase. The jockey dropped his whip. He's now got Richard Johnson for company. He's just one of those horses that might get overlooked a little bit. I know he's sort of 10-12-1, but I think he's really, really solid. A superb jumper. I think he stays. At the start of the season, I thought maybe he might end up over an intermediate trip and might even scale the heights of becoming a Grade 1 horse. I think he's in the right sort of company now. this is perfect for him. You want to be in a prominent pitch there in the Ultima, away from the trouble that can unfold further back in the field, and any ground comes alike. I really like Outright. I think it's a real chance for the North to be on the board, Dave, because we're a little bit thinly represented, unfortunately.
Relying on Sam Spinner winning the Stayers Hurdle, aren't we, for Grade 1 glory with everything on the ground. Thanks to Matt and the guys for the tips there. A couple of Boodle fancies for you. Boodle's Exact. I wasn't expecting that when we went into the preview, but obviously the opening day, mouth-watering prospect, and we can't wait to see that clash in the Sporting Life Arkle.